In this video, we're going to talk about what is an ice age. We're also going to talk about what causes an ice age. Then we're going to talk about the global flood in Genesis and how that may have impacted an ice age. And then we're going to look at biblical evidence for an ice age. Was there an ice age in the Bible? In public schools, students are taught that there have been at least 5 major ice ages in Earth's multi-billion year history. The last one is claimed to have started 2.58 million years ago and then retreated about 10,000 years ago. There is scientific evidence for one ice age that occurred within the biblical time scale. The real ice age occurred shortly after the global flood and lasted a few hundred years. What is an ice age? Many people have the misconception that an ice age is simply a cold Earth. But just turning down Earth's temperature does not result in an ice age. It just results in a really cold Earth. To have an ice age, we need lots of ice, which makes glaciers. Today, about 10% of the Earth's land is covered by glaciers. During the ice age, about 30% of Earth's land was covered by glaciers. So the Earth was not a frozen snowball during the ice age. Sections of the Earth were actually tropical at the time. The Ice Age simply reflects a time when the Earth had more ice, covering about 3 times as much of the land as we have today. There's compelling evidence of an Ice Age. Glacial striations are scratches that occur on certain rocky outcrops and indicate glacial motion. These striations were caused by rocks and pebbles embedded in the underside of glaciers as it moved over the outcropping. From glacier striations, we can know approximately where the glaciers were during the peak of the Ice Age. But what caused the Ice Age and what ended it? Interestingly, secular scientists do not have a consistent answer to this question. Many people have the impression that a reduction in Earth's global temperatures would naturally result in an ice age, but it won't. During the Ice Age, the glaciers were 3 times more extensive than they are today. But lowering Earth's temperature will not do this. A cold Earth would have cold oceans, which do not evaporate efficiently, and cold air cannot hold much temperature. This would tend to result in less snowfall and therefore fewer glaciers. And of course, an increase in Earth's temperature will not result in an ice age either, because it will tend to result in the melting of glaciers that already exist. Most secular scientists invoke the Milankovitch theory to explain the Ice Age. This theory involves the gradual changes in the shape of Earth's orbit around the Sun in conjunction with the precision of Earth's rotation axis. This supposedly results in various parts of the Earth receiving either more or less sunlight, thereby affecting the temperature. However, it does not adequately resolve the problem because a reduction in temperature does not result in more ice. So what physical mechanism could result in the Earth having glaciers 3 times more extensive than what we have today? First, it would require increased snowfall so the glaciers can build up over time. Secondly, it would require mild seasons. Relatively cold summers are needed so that the ice doesn't melt as much, and relatively warm winters are needed since warm air holds more moisture than cold air, therefore allowing more snowfall. Warm oceans and cooler continents would be ideal for the formation of glaciers. Warm ocean water evaporates rapidly, and when the moist air moves over cooler land, the temperature drops, resulting in snowfall, since cooler air cannot retain much moisture. But what would cause these conditions? The global flood described in Genesis 6 through 8 would naturally result in the conditions necessary to cause an ice age. During the flood, the fountains of the great deep burst open, according to Genesis 7, verse 11. This may refer to underwater volcanoes erupting simultaneously. The flood was associated with violent tectonic activity. Most creation scientists believe that the continents were connected before the flood into a single landmass, which split apart during the Genesis flood. The enormous energy from the geological activity would warm the ocean waters substantially. Second, the volcanic activity would eject aerosols into Earth's atmosphere. This would continue even after the waters from the flood retreated and the land appeared. These aerosols reflect sunlight back into space. Since less sunlight reaches the continents, they would be cooler than normal. Even today, when a major volcano erupts, it results in temporary reduction in Earth's temperature. Warm oceans and cool continents are the ideal conditions for the formation of glaciers. The warm ocean water would evaporate, and the moist air would move over the cool land masses. As the air cools, it cannot maintain its moisture, and snow would fall onto the land. In the centuries that followed the global flood, the ice sheets built up over time. The warm oceans, along with the aerosols in the atmosphere, would have resulted in mild seasons, relatively cool summers and warm winters. Since much of the Earth's water would be locked up in glaciers, the oceans would have been over 300 feet lower than they are today. This would result in natural land bridges and ice bridges between land masses that today are separated by water. This is an important consideration because the descendants of the animals aboard Noah's Ark were dispersing to various parts of the world. People sometimes ask how the animals got from one continent to another without realizing that the lower ocean levels would result in natural land and ice bridges. Although the exact time scale is difficult to estimate, most creation scientists believe that the ice age built up for a few centuries after the global flood, and then receded over the next few centuries as geological activity waned. This is significant because it means that certain biblical persons would have lived during the Ice Age. This includes Abraham and Job. Our best estimate places the global flood around the year 2348 BC. We know that Abraham was born at least 292 years after the global flood, and therefore around the year 2056 BC. He lived to an age of 175, it tells us in Genesis 25, verse 7. So Abraham lived at around this time creation scientists estimate to be near the peak of the Ice Age. Consequently, the climate in the area would have been somewhat different from what it is today. We see an example of this in the account of the separation of Lot's family from Abraham's as recorded in Genesis 13. You might remember that Lot chose to live in the valley of the Jordan near Sodom, and eventually in Sodom because it was lush and well watered everywhere, it tells us in Genesis 13, 10, and 11. Today, this region is a desert, but during the Ice Age, the cooler temperatures and mild seasons would have made it the lush land the Bible describes. Although we don't know the precise date when Job lived, most scholars believe that he lived around the same time as Abraham, roughly around 2000 BC. Job's lifespan of more than 140 years and possibly more than 200 years is consistent with the lifespan of human beings at that time. And Job's wealth is described in terms of livestock rather than silver or gold, which is consistent with the time of Abraham. The text of Job contains some hints that Job indeed lived during an ice age. The book of Job has more references to ice than any other book of the Bible. Job 6:16, Job 37:10, and Job 38:29. The book of Job also has 5 references to snow, more than any other book in the Bible. Job 6:16, Job 9:30, Job 24:29, Job 37:6, and Job 38:22. This suggests that Job was very familiar with ice and snow. Job lived in the land of Uz, which we believe to be south of Israel in the northwest part of Arabia. This area is quite warm today, and snow is very uncommon, but during the Ice Age, things would have been different. We have good evidence from science and from the text of Scripture that an ice age occurred shortly after the global flood and as a direct consequence of the flood. With so much of Earth's water trapped in glaciers, the ocean levels would have been at least 300 feet lower than today, resulting in land bridges and ice bridges between the continents. This was no accident. It was by the providence of God and helped the animals migrate to the various continents. So, even though the Bible doesn't directly talk about the Ice Age, it certainly fits in with the narrative stories of the Bible. Be sure to comment below with any questions or comments you have and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss future episodes.